As a gardener, and especially a gardener that grows from seed, selling seedlings is one of the easiest ways to make a little bit of extra money on the side. And today I wanted to talk to you about how to sell seedlings, but specifically pre-orders, taking pre-orders to sell your seedlings. And so this is a follow-up to my other video that I did before. So this is part 2, and part 1 was more on how to sell seedlings overarching, whether it's at a market or taking pre-orders. So after you're done watching this video, you'll definitely want to check out part 1. It doesn't matter which order you watch them in, but they're definitely both going to help you on how to make a few extra $100 on the side just by selling seedlings. If you're new here, my name is Bree from Urban Gardening Canada, and I garden in Ottawa Zone 5. This is a really relevant video right now because it's the perfect time to be starting all of your seeds, which means that it's the perfect time to be taking pre-orders, and all of the gardeners out there who normally buy their seedlings from a nursery or a greenhouse are already thinking about their garden. And so it's the perfect time to be asking people what they want to buy, and being able to plant the seeds is just perfectly lined up right now. And so you will find this video to be super helpful, especially if you're looking at taking pre-orders. So the first thing that I want to talk about is pricing. And I did touch on this in my first video, but it's a little bit different now because in the first video, I suggested that one of the ways you can choose your pricing is by looking at others around you, especially at a market, to see what they are pricing their seedlings at. So that way you can have a competitive price along with them. But if you are taking pre-orders, that means that you have to come up with your own price, and you have to be confident in that price. And I'm going to come back to the confidence part of this later in this video, so make sure you stick around for that part. But when you are taking pre-orders, you do have to set up your own price. And so there's a couple different ways that you can go about doing this. So when you think about going to a greenhouse, as gardeners, we've all been to the greenhouse and nursery, so you do have subconsciously in the back of your mind what an average price is for a seedling. So it's not like you're like, well, is it $1? Is it $10? You have a pretty good idea of what you've seen seedlings being sold for in the past, whether you're at a farmer's market or at the nursery. Here in Ontario, prices for seedlings are usually around $4 to $5 Canadian. And so this is a really good starting point for you to decide how much you're going to price your plants at. And so the first strategy is to pick a price and charge all of your seedlings as the same price. And so that is the direction that I've gone this year because I find it a lot easier. So what this means is that I have my pre-order list, and every single plant is listed for the same price. And I chose to do $3. And so a lot of my gardening friends who sell their seedlings find this really cheap. Some sell them for $4 and others sell them for $5. But the reason that I've chosen $3 is because all of my plants are the same price. And so for certain plants, $3 could potentially be expensive. So for example, lettuce, nasturtiums, or beans, which tend to be really easy to direct sow. For tomatoes or other plants, that this is actually quite a cheap price to be charging $3. I actually have 3 different reasons why I chose to do a cheaper price for this. The first one is that I'm fairly new to the neighborhood and selling seedlings, so people don't really know me. And so this is a lower risk way for them to get to know me for my seedlings. The second one is that I just don't have time to come up with specific pricing based off of the different seeds that I have. So making my tomatoes $5 or my lettuce $3, I just don't really have the time. And so if I know I'm selling 5 plants, I know I'm making $15. It's just easier for me. And the third one is that a lot of my seeds are aging now. I started collecting a lot of these seeds over the past 10 years. And so I just have tons and tons of seeds. And so for me, I really just want to sell a lot of plants and plant a lot of them and just clear out my inventory. So for me, I chose to put it at a lower price just because of all of these different aspects. However, if you are going to go around with the single price, you can choose $4, you can choose $5. It's really up to you and what suits you best, and your confidence with how well you can grow and how big your plants are going to be and how healthy they are. It's really up to you. The con about selling it at my lower price is that I'm leaving a lot of money on the table. Had I charged $5 for everything, I maybe would get less orders, but if I got the same amount of orders, I've left about $200 on the table this year. And so it's really something that you have to look at is what the goal is. Are you selling seedlings because you like the idea of community and you want to give food to people, or are you trying to make the most amount of money? It's really up to you, and that is what you would do if you're going to price all of your plants at a single price. The second pricing strategy is to price them based off of what type of plant they are. So if you chose to start early and plant peppers or eggplants for people, you are going to want to charge a higher price for these ones because you've been taking care of them for weeks longer than a lot of the other plants. So you would want to charge higher for those, and tomatoes are such a common plant that everybody wants to buy. So charging the $5 for that one or at the higher end for tomatoes is always good because you're going to get the best bang for your buck. And then you might want to choose to price lower for things like lettuce or kale that are actually really cheap to buy at the grocery store. So people are more price sensitive to the lettuce greens or the herbs. And so you have the choice of being able to change your prices based off of the type of plant, how long it's going to take, or the price that it is at the grocery store, just to make it look more appealing for different people. So the benefit to this is that if you charge $5 or the higher end for your tomatoes are really popular, so you will get the most bang for your buck. And the range of pricing is also appealing to people who think that they're now getting a good deal on their lettuce. For whatever reason, oftentimes if you price things all at the same price, $3 for tomatoes and $3 for lettuce, people are going to look at that and be like, they're not ever going to look at it and be like, wow, I'm getting such a good deal on my tomatoes and the lettuce is average price. They're looking at it and going, how can I be getting lettuce and tomatoes for the same price? This doesn't seem right. I think they're overcharging for the lettuce. There are certain people who feel that way. And so by changing your pricing by a scale, having a higher end for tomatoes or peppers and a lower end for lettuce means that you might not get that same experience. So you are going to get orders that are a mix and match where people find that they're getting certain value, even though it all nets out to about the same price. So a little bit earlier, I mentioned that you have to be confident in your price. And so what I mean by this is I want you to take it slow and really understand your pricing and be comfortable with what you're selling it at. Make a decision to say, yeah, I feel like $5 is fair based off of the time and the seeds and the soil and the electricity that it uses. Be confident. And the reason that I say that is because when you're taking pre-orders, you're often doing it off of Facebook or a neighborhood group where people maybe don't know you, especially if you're new to selling. And there are some people out there who are going to question your prices. And so this can be frustrating, especially if you're new to this and they don't know you, because you're like, what do you mean it's $3? Are you really questioning me on this? And so it's really important that you're confident in your pricing so that way you can confidently reply back to people. There are some gardeners out there who buy seedlings and they want the cheapest price possible. They want to go to your grocery garden center and get 3 pepper plants in one pot and pay $3 for it. But the reality is that us small growers, we cannot ever give them at the same price as a greenhouse. And so you have to be confident and let them know that you are growing as a small gardener, you're growing all organic, you're going to have them all hard and offer them, and that you can never compete with a greenhouse. And if they really push back at you, don't take their order, don't lower your prices, don't change anything. Just tell them that they are better off going to a greenhouse to get what they need and that you aren't the right fit for them. Because the reality is you can't get the cheapest price while supporting a small business. That's never going to happen. And so they need to choose one or the other. And the more confident you are in what you have to offer and what your value is, the better off you'll be able to manage any type of criticism or people questioning your prices. And you won't lower your prices or give away something that you should not be giving away. You have to remember that even if you start your seeds now at the beginning of April and you're selling them in middle of May, that's 6 weeks of work. That's 6 weeks of planting seeds, watering them, turning on the lights, up potting them, buying the soil, bringing them outside every single day to harden them off for 6 weeks for one $3, $4, or $5 plant. Like if you break that down, like there's no minimum wage that exists there. And so it's just really important to be confident in your pricing. This isn't really a business that you're going to make the best bang for your buck or, a high dollar per hour, but it's really, you can make a few $100s, which is sweet to help pay for your hobby, and you get to meet your neighbors in the meantime. So one final thing to think about when it comes to your pricing is how much does something cost at the grocery store? So for example, I'm charging $3 for my lettuce And people are asking me, well, how many come in it? Or is it a whole tray or something like that? And I get it, because lettuce in a seed packet, you can get 1,000 seeds in a seed packet. But also at the same time, if you want me to sell my lettuce to you at a decent size, I can't have them all in a single pot, which means that I'm now upgrading my lettuce into new pots, which cost me more soil, more time, more pots. And so really you have to come up with a price that makes sense, but also isn't too cheap. Again, you're not trying to compete with a greenhouse. And if I go to the grocery store, I'm not sure where you live, how much this is, but organic lettuce here is super expensive. It's hard for me to find it. There's only a couple grocery stores here in Ottawa that have decent organic lettuce, not wrapped in plastic, because I try my best to not buy my produce wrapped in plastic, which is nearly impossible when it comes to organic. But at Metro, a tiny little organic head of romaine lettuce, $4.49. That is so expensive. So even if I sold a single lettuce plant in a pot for $3, it's organic and it's going to be way cheaper than what you can get at the grocery store. And because it's lettuce, you can cut and come again, which means you can harvest off this plant continuously and it's going to keep growing. So that one $3 plant technically is way cheaper than the grocery store. However, I don't recommend only selling one lettuce in a pot, because people are going to be like, what the heck is this? But it's a perfect example to show that if anybody was questioning it, or you're trying to come up with your prices to say, hey, well, one head of lettuce is $5 at the grocery store and I'm selling you 3 lettuce for $5. So you're actually making money and you're able to grow it organically and harvest it during the day. So the main thing that it is with pricing is to just do your research. You can ask some other people, other gardeners in your area or friends that you might have, how much they sell their seedlings for, and have the confidence and know your worth. So that way you're able to confidently sell. And if anybody questions you, you already have the answers for them. All right, so the next thing is your order list. If you're going to be taking pre-orders, you need to have an order list. And so there are some specific do's and don'ts that come with this, so that way it can be seamless for you and you'll be able to get as much as you can without having too much trouble as you're trying to take these orders, because depending on how big your neighborhood group is, these orders can be coming in like quick and fast, and it can start to confuse you or stress you out. And so the more organized you are with your order list, the better it is. Okay, so the first step is do not give your entire seed inventory list to people. So there's technically 2 ways that you can make a list. The first is that you can go out and invest in some seeds that you want to list to sell to people. But the problem with that is that you would have to guess in advance what varieties people want, which makes it a little bit more difficult. Plus it costs more than if you just used whatever seeds that you already own. And so the second one is to just use the seeds that are in your own seed library or seed inventory. And so this is the route that I take. And so I have once upon a time written a list of all of the seeds that I own in an Excel file, because I just have so many of them and I just need to know what I want to plant and keep it organized. And so I just found this really helpful. So I had gone through every single one of my seeds in the winter and wrote them down. And so the nice thing about this is, because I had that list, I could whittle it down to a smaller list of what I wanted to do to give to people and allow them to order from it. And so one mistake that you can make is giving them too many options. So the problem with this is that if you have 60 options, you can have 10 people coming back and each of them are picking only one of a specific variety. And so instead of you getting 10 orders where all 10 of them include one specific variety of tomato, which is easier to plant, you might get 10 orders with 10 different varieties of tomatoes. And so you're planting one single seed of every different one. And it's kind of annoying and time consuming. And so it's easier that if you have a more curated list, that you are going to have more people ordering the same of an item. So it's a lot easier for you to be planting and not spending too much time on. So I touched on this in my other video, and that is about varieties. And so you do also have to choose which varieties you want to give to people. And so the first one is that if you have something that's special in your seed inventory that you absolutely love and you don't really want to sell it, don't add it to the list. Don't feel pressured that you're like, well, I think this is amazing, and so I have to give it to these people because it's a guaranteed sale. Don't do that if you don't want to sell it. Then you also have to think about if you want to offer basic varieties. So there are beginner gardeners who like to grow the same type of thing. They like their paste tomatoes, they like their lettuce, they like some basil. But is there maybe people out there who are looking for unique varieties? So they want like a cinnamon basil or a Thai basil or a tomato that they've never heard of before. And so you have to come up with varieties from your inventory to have a mix. It's always good to have your base plants in there that are tried and true, but also throwing in some unique varieties. And this will give you a good indication for future years if people do like the mix of the two, or if they're looking for very unique varieties or very basic, depending on the skill set of the people around you. I found that it's a mix. People like their Romas, but they also like their Karma multiflora purples. So it just really depends. And I think that a lot of people have space for their tried and true tomato, but they also want to try something different that year. And so having a healthy blend of those two different types of varieties is really good. All right, so the next one is a really easy mistake to make, and that is taking your seed inventory that you typed out in the winter and just copying and pasting it and sending it out to people, curated or not, and not checking how many seeds you have in your seed packet. So you might send out a list of seeds for a specific variety of cucumber, and you're gonna come back and have 10 people saying that they want that specific cucumber. Now, the problem might be that you don't even have 10 seeds left over in the packet, or it only came with 10 seeds in the packet and you wanted to grow it this year. And so it's really important to know that you have enough seeds in that package for you to be able to grow your own if you want that variety in your garden that year, and also to sell it. And not only that, if you have 10 seeds in that seed packet and you're fine with growing them and selling them all, you really only want to sell it to 8 people, because the germination may not be 100%. And so it's always important to plant more than you are going to be selling. So therefore, knowing how many seeds are in each packet is really beneficial. So that way you can take it off of the order list as people are ordering, or you can tell them when they come back and say, sorry, I'm actually out of that one now. However, I have this really good replacement. Do you want this one? All right, so next up, when it comes to your order list, is knowing when they have to be planted. So I put out my list to my neighbors about 10 days ago now. And so this was near the end of March. And so I never included any peppers, no eggplants, nothing that takes a long time to germinate from seed. So it's really important to know when your seeds need to be planted. So that way you're not including anything on your list that you actually can't grow in time to be selling. So for me, because I did it at the end of March, I made sure that everything on the list was only 4 to 6 weeks from planting. And so this includes your zucchinis, your cucumbers, tomatoes, a lot of annual flowers, kale, lettuce, spinach. All of these things are 4 to 6 weeks before your last frost date. They grow fairly fast, and these are what people actually want to be growing. And so I made sure not to include anything on my list. So make sure you don't include anything on your list that is going to stress you out and you're not going to be able to grow it in time, that you either have to say to them after the fact, hey, sorry, I can't offer this to you, or you have to give them a discount, because that is a waste of your time and energy. And so making sure your order list is curated to the timeline of when you're offering it is something that is really important. Okay, so on your order list itself, I highly recommend including a deadline on it, because people are going to take their time, they're going to forget about it, they're not going to find it that big of a rush, they're just not really thinking about you because they've got so much going on in their lives. So not only telling people about the deadline, but including it in your order form is really important to make sure that they get back to you on time, because if you don't plant your seeds on time, you can't provide a good quality seedling, and the goal is to get people to come back next year. So by adding that deadline inside of your order form means that people are very clear on when they have to get back to you. So this next step isn't necessary, but I do find it helpful, and that is including how many plants come in the pot that you're selling. So on your order form, saying if you're selling it for $4, how many plants they can expect to be getting. So for a pepper, a tomato, or a zucchini, it's going to be 1 most likely. You're probably not going to stick 3 zucchinis into a pot, because truly, even though you can get that at the nursery, they are spindly and not that great, versus you're going to give them one big healthy one. But you can change it and put whatever you want. And for lettuce, kale, basil, something like that, you might say that you're going to get 3 to 5 plants per pot. So that way they don't come back to you. This comes back to that pricing point with confidence, is that if you have, this is my large leaf basil, you're getting 3 per pot and it's $3, they have nothing to question. They know exactly how many plants they're getting. They know exactly what it's going to cost. And so they can make that decision on whether they want to buy it or not without having to ask you, well, how many do I get? And so this is optional, but I do think that it will save you a lot of time and energy and questions and people questioning how much the value is, and they'll just come back and order it, or they might not. So the next thing is how you're going to distribute your order list. And so Facebook is the easiest place to contact your neighbors unless you have some other kind of forum that exists where you talk to your neighbors. And so you can either post an entire list or a link into your Facebook group for people to download. You can send it individually in private messages to different people. You can collect all of their email addresses and email everybody all at once with your document. Or you can use something like Google Docs or a shared document file where people can go in and just fill out the form. The only thing with a Google Doc is that you might run the risk of people overriding other people's requests or orders. And so this is a bit of a difficult one. So if you want to lock it or teach them how to make a copy, there's different ways that you can go about that. But this is another way that you can get that list out to people. And so you really have to think about what works the best for you in being able to collect your orders, whether you want it all in one place so that way there's less communication on your part, or you want to private message everybody and worry about the communication with all these different people. It's whatever works best for you. And so the final thing is knowing your capacity. So do you have 1 rack for seedlings? Do you have 2 racks? Do you have a whole grow room? Do you have a greenhouse outside? What is your capacity on top of what you're growing for your own garden? Because you don't want to get so caught up in taking orders that A, you don't have space for your own vegetables or your own flowers in your garden, and B, you don't want to be overrun where now all of a sudden you don't have space on your grow racks, you can't be growing anything successfully and it's stressing you out, or you have to go out and buy a whole new grow setup of lights and trays and the rack, because that's going to cost you so much money that you're not going to make any money. So it's really, really important to know what your capacity is, both in terms of how many seeds you have, how much time you have, how much space you have, and just what your overall interest is in growing for people, because it's really easy to get caught up and be excited that there's orders coming in and that there's money coming in and look how much money I can make, and oh my gosh, all these people are so excited, I want to help them and grow for them. It's so easy to get caught up in that. And then all of a sudden you have orders to grow 400 plants. And do you have the pots, the soil, the space, and the time to grow 400 plants? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. And so it's really important that you know what your cap is and what your limit is before you continue to take more orders. And worst case, if you have to cut it off before the deadline, do that, because you need to make sure that you save your sanity and you don't neglect your own garden at the same time. So next up is how to get orders and keep costs down. But before I get into that, I do want to mention that I have a self-paced course online, and it is the perfect time to be taking it. And it's how to build a strong garden in the face of climate change. So with all of the cold weather, the tornadoes, the hurricanes, the snowfalls, the hail, the high winds, the ice storms, everything that's coming, all of this can put your garden at risk. But there are different ways that you can build strong plants, healthy soil that is both making sure that they can withstand some of this wild weather, not tornadoes, but some of this wild weather, while also being able to help take in carbon from the atmosphere and store it for you. So that way you are fighting climate change while also protecting your garden. And so if you're interested in taking this course and building a stronger garden and being an environmental activist, there's even a free preview where you can see what is inside of there and get a couple lectures for free. And again, I'll leave that below. Okay, so let's talk about how to get orders. And so I've mentioned this a bit earlier in this video, and honestly, the easiest way is through Facebook. So if you don't have a Facebook account, I highly recommend investing in one. You don't need to use it for anything other than for this. And so what you'll do is join your neighborhood group. So it seems that no matter where you live, that there's always a neighborhood group for your area. There is here in Ottawa, I have one for my very small neighborhood, and then I have one for a larger version of the neighborhood. And so I could choose to put in my offer to sell seedlings in either one of them. I chose the smaller one because I don't have a ton of space and I really don't want to be overrun with orders. I have gotten about 10 orders this year and everybody's gotten anywhere from 5 to 10 plants, and like that is good for me. I don't need to be growing hundreds on hundreds of plants. It gets me a decent amount of money and I'm quite happy with that. Plus, I'm also doing a seedling sale as well, and so I need to be able to have space for both of these events. And the other option that you can do is to find some other type of neighborhood group if it doesn't exist on Facebook. Like say, for example, you have a Reddit subreddit that is specific to either your city or to a gardening group, then you can choose to go on there as well. And the other option is if you don't have a neighborhood group, to look up your local gardening group, because not everybody there is a professional gardener. There's a lot of beginner gardeners that are there just looking for advice, so they may be willing to buy seedlings from you. Okay, so let's get into how to keep costs down, because this is a business that you're trying to make as much money as possible. And so the first thing you can do is time your seedlings right. That means don't plant them too early. That way you only have to upgrade them one time. So you're going to plant them in seedling soil, and once they germinate and they get to a certain size, you are going to upgrade them one time to their final pot. That is the goal. If you can reach that, it may not necessarily happen, but that is the goal. One single uppotting. And what this is going to do is it's going to save you time, it's going to save you money on soil, and it's going to save you money on pots. And the second thing that you can do is find free pots. So many people hoard pots, so you can message in that same neighborhood group and say, does anybody have any pots they're trying to get rid of? And you can go around and you can collect those. So this way you don't have to buy any pots. Or your other option is to make square newspaper pots. I have a video that I'll link below on how to make these, and this is just using newspapers or flyers, and you can either make them round if you want to. These ones round is faster, but the square ones just fit in trays better. They don't tip over. You're not accidentally going to lose any of your plants. And the newspaper is sweet because it makes you environmentally friendly. It's a talking point when people come to pick up their plants, and it also costs you absolutely nothing in order to make them. And then when you hand them off, your customers can just go and rip the bottom open if it hasn't already disintegrated as it's been growing, and they can plant the pot and the plant directly in the soil, and it's going to grow happily without having to disturb it, which is so much easier for your customers. Okay, so let's talk about what to do if your plants fail, because this is inevitable. Something is going to fail. And so the first thing that I want to talk to you about is that you should plant more seeds than you have orders. And so this goes back to earlier in the video, that if you only have 10 seeds of one variety, only sell 8 in pre-order, so that way you have 2 for a buffer, because plants might fail either through germination, they might die when if you over or underwater them, or they might die during the hardening off process. This is just something that is a part of growing seedlings from seed. And so making sure you plant a buffer is really, really important. And so that is the first thing to help prevent your plants from failing. Okay, so now if you've planted a buffer and your seeds still fail, either from damping off or when you're hardening them off, maybe you put them in the sun too early or you put them out in the cold, which I've already killed a couple plants from putting them out when it was too cold out, then the next thing you need to figure out is, do you have enough time to plant your seeds again? So especially with damping off, because that happens so early in the process, there's a good chance you might be able to plant your seeds again, so that way you can start germination all over again. But let's say that during the hardening off process, you kill your plants and obviously there's not enough time to plant again, or you sunburn your plants, or they're just like an awkward size that you really feel uncomfortable selling it to people. then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to message the person who put in that order as soon as possible. And I know that it doesn't feel like you need to tell them right away because they're not maybe picking them up for a week or two, but maybe they had ordered seedlings from another small grower, and it gives them enough time to ask the other grower if they can get seedlings from them, or else it helps them prepared that they're going to have to go out and buy those seedlings from a greenhouse. It's just always nicer to give people more time than less and not hiding it from them and not letting them know what's going on. And so say you have a seedling that's a little bit smaller than you would like to be selling it, you can either choose to sell it to them and see if they complain or ask for a discount, or you can say, hey, like the seedling didn't grow as fast as I wanted it to. I was going to sell it to you for $5, but I'll give it to you for $4. Did you still want it? And really give them that option. You can send them pictures in advance before they come and pick it up and let them decide. So this is just a really good way to offer good customer service, because if you want to sell seedlings next year, you really want to make sure that you're giving good customer service so that way they come back the next year and you're really not hiding it, because the truth of the matter is you're a small grower, you have limited space, things are going to fail, not everything's going to go perfectly right, and you shouldn't stress or have anxiety about it, but rather just come up with these alternatives that I gave to you, or else let them know, and it's not the end of the world. So you don't really have to worry about it, just try your best. Okay, so this is the final part, and this is when they are picking up their plants. There are some best practices for this, even though it seems straightforward. And the first one is hardening off your plants. So when a person goes to a greenhouse or a nursery or a farmer's market to buy the seedlings, those seedlings have already been hardened off. They've been outside, they're sitting in an outdoor greenhouse. The employees aren't necessarily pulling in the plants. They're just there doing their job. They're not all going to be big plant lovers who are like, oh, we need to bring them in at night. It'll be below zero. You know, like these plants that are at the nurseries, I've been through it. And so you want to make sure that your plants are hard enough too. This is a service that is extra time and extra effort, but you're going to want to do it because you're never going to want to hand off your seedlings to someone and be like, take them inside every night, bring them out for half an hour, then take them inside, and then bring them out for an hour, then take them inside. Like, no, nobody wants that. Just harden them off and then make sure that they know that they can directly plant them outside. Or you can even, one of my friends gives care instructions and planting instructions with all of her seedlings, which I think is like the ultimate customer service. I don't do that part, but this is just another thing that you can tell them how to plant their plants after you've hardened them off and you're selling it to them. Next up is giving your customers multiple days to pick up their seedlings. Everybody's busy. So there's two things to this. You do want to give them multiple days, but do not make the window of pickup too big. So for example, you're not going to want to say, hey, come anytime on Saturday or Sunday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and that you feel like you have to be home for them to pick them up, because that is horrible. People are going to come at random times. You're going to be sitting there wondering when people are coming. Don't do that. Do give them multiple days. Do not give them huge windows of opportunity. So you can say that every night this week I'm available from 5 to 7 p.m. to come pick them up. It's maybe your dinner time, or you just go home from work and you're relaxing and you don't mind if people come over in those 2 hours and you're going to be home anyways. This is a really good time to be doing it. So that way you aren't sitting around like checking your phone, checking your watch, wondering when people are coming, but you're also giving people multiple days to pick up their plants because everybody's busy and has something going on. The other option is you can also get them to pay you through e-transfer or Venmo or whatever exists wherever you're watching this. Here in Canada, we have e-transfer, so that way they can just pay you. You can collect the money and then just put their plants out on the porch and they can come pick them up. This is an easier option. It's just you want to make sure that when they pay you that they are picking it up within a couple hours. So that way if the weather's bad, you're not leaving the plants out in bad weather or they're going to get damaged, or you're leaving them out overnight where a squirrel or a raccoon could come in and damage them, and then you've got to figure out what's happening with all of that. So you're definitely going to want to make sure that you take the payment and the pickup are really close to each other. Okay, and so this final tip I think is really a really good tip, and that is that when people are coming over and you arrange a pickup time, let them know what they're picking up, how much they owe you, but tell them if you have any extra seedlings. So for me, I'm actually going to set up my pickup time right before I have a seedling sale. So they'll have Monday to Friday to pick it up. And on Saturday, I have a seedling sale. So that way, if people don't come, too bad, so sad, I'm going to sell your plants because, of course, you're taking on risk growing your plants and not getting paid up front. So if people aren't going to take it seriously to come pick up the plants and pay for them, I'm going to sell them. That's just the way it's going to be because money in my pocket is better than a plant that I can't fit in my garden. And so that is what I'm going to do. However, if you don't have a seedling sale coming up, I highly recommend telling them what plants they're picking up because it's been a couple months since they ordered it, how much they owe you, and providing them a list of all of the seedlings that you still have available for sale. Because of that buffer, those 10 cucumbers that you planted for those 8 orders, if all of them grew and you don't have space for those last 2 cucumbers, they're available for grabs. And so send this order list to these people and say, I still have these available. And now that it's planting time and people are in a very different mindset when it comes to gardening, they might be like, why did I only order 5 plants? I really actually can fit 15 in my garden, so I'm going to order more. Or I didn't see this variety before. There's something that's going to happen. And so if you send them this list of what you have remaining and say, is there anything else you want to add to your order? This is a super good way to upsell your customers to spend a little bit of extra money with you. And you get to get rid of these seedlings that you didn't have space for in your garden anyways. Of course, the other option is you can post on Facebook and say, for anybody who didn't get their order in on time, here's what I have available. So there's also different ways that you can sell your excess seedlings, or you can sell them at the end of your driveway if you don't have an HOA or something that isn't allowing you to do that. But this way, there is another way to upsell people and sell the seedlings that you have left over, so you're not saddled with a bunch of extra plants that you now don't have space for and you have to watch them tragically die dried out on your lawn, which is what happens to me. And so this is a super, super good way to make a little bit of extra money at the end when you're selling all your seedlings. And so that is it for this video. Again, this is part 2 of a 2-part series of how to sell seedlings. So make sure you check out that first video because that one is going to give you way more information and it's more in depth. This is specifically for pre-orders versus this is for any type of way you want to sell seedlings in that part 1 video. And if you did enjoy today's video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and check out part 1. Bye.